Good afternoon, members of the board. As your corporate officer, I'm calling this December 13th Sea to Sky Regional Hospital District Board meeting to order at 3:37. We would like to recognize that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Lillooet Nation. The first order of business is the election of chair and vice chair as required in November of each year by the Local Government Act and the SSRHD procedures by law. With that, I would like to call for nominations of chair for the Hospital District Board for the year 2024. Calling a first time for nominations of the
I
chair.
will nominate Janet.
So I was gonna nominate.
Director Stoner.
Let's all nominate.
No. Oh, no, Mike. You gotta hold it. You can just go.
Director Stoner, do you consent to the nomination?
I do.
Okay, calling a second time for nominations of the chair.
I'd like to nominate Jenna Stoner.
Thank you. Calling a third and final time for nominations of chair. Seeing no further nominations, I will declare the nominations closed. And I will pass the chair over to Director Stoner, as has been acclaimed, Chair of the Sea to Sky Regional Hospital District Board for 2024.
Director Belsham, and to my colleagues, I will open the floor for nominations of vice chair. And I'll nominate Jen Ford.
All right.
Will you accept the nomination?
Yes, thank you.
I'll call for a second time for a nomination for vice chair. And for a third and final time, a nomination for vice chair. Seeing no other names, Jen Ford is acclaimed as vice chair. Thank you very much for stepping forward. And with that, we'll move on with our agenda. So can I get an approval agenda moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Crompton? Any opposed? Motion carries. We do not have a closed agenda today. Nothing to rise and report. The consent agenda moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Pangill. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes today? Not seeing any. We do have to consider our 2024 provisional budget bylaw. This is an administrative component to bridge us to the 2024 actual budgeting process. We do have Director LaFrance online if anybody has any questions. Yeah, Director Pangill.
So sorry, just to clarify, we'll be doing a more fulsome budget for 2025.
2024. Oh, okay.
It's a weird legislative thing.
Okay,
Director LaFrance, do you want to just high level speak to why we need this bridging provisional budget to get us to the more fulsome 2024 budget in March?
You're on mute.
Sorry, it's just a requirement of the Hospital District Act. And as you stated, to allow us to continue with our regular operations until the budget is adopted in March 31st.
A little bit confusing, I know, but legislatively required.
just.
Yeah.
And the one reason I'm a little bit curious is, given the master planning process, I did wonder if we want some extra money available to really push our interests in that process, and do we have the resources we need? If it's better to do it in the full one, that's fine, but.
Yeah,
Want to make
we'll
sure
have a
that
more
gets-
fulsome discussion around the full budget in the new year. Q1. So can I have somebody move first three readings? Moved by Director Ford, seconded by Director Mack. Any opposed? Motion carries, and a motion to adopt. Moved by Director Ford, seconded by Director Mack. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 8.1, CAO verbal update.
I do not.
No update from the CAO. 8.2 is a request for decision for the 2024 Sea to Sky Regional Hospital District Board meeting calendar. Anybody have any questions on that? Yeah.
Not a question, but I would like to make the motion with the amendment to the start time of 3 o'clock rather than 3:30. We often need more than a half an hour. And so I would just put it on the floor for consideration. Because we're putting in a time, it would be better not to have a time, but we have to. So I would just put that out there for a 3 o'clock start time.
Okay, my only hesitation there is that our board meetings typically go quite long.
I know,
Okay,
but
so is,
then we carry over
To the next day anyway,
most,
so.
most of the day anyway. Yeah, most of the days will carry over anyway.
anybody else have any comments or thoughts on that proposed motion? Yeah,
It's good.
Director Pettingill?
That makes sense. Maybe it's an incentive to really think about our board agendas.
Yeah, it's good.
All right. So Director Ford makes the motion with the amendment that at 3 p.m. start time. Seconded by Director Mack. Any opposed? Motion carried. With 3 minutes left in the meeting, we'll fly through the chair's verbal report, which I think the only thing that I have is that Director Ford and I on Monday attended the BCH Regional Hospital District annual meeting across all the coastal communities, regional hospital districts. Quebec, Sunshine Coast and ourselves. And I would say I have been relatively new to the table, but I feel like it was actually productive. Jen and I were kind of cautious about spending the whole day getting there for a 2-hour in-person meeting. But it was actually really open and frank discussion about some of the challenges that we've been having. I think they are actually responding to the fact that the approach that we've taken for the last number of years is actually hitting home, that we want more involvement in their capital planning process. We want more information up front. And we want to make sure that our tax dollars are going to regional priorities as opposed to just replacing operation and maintenance capital components. So there's still some questions around what that actually looks like at the end of the day in terms of their budgeting cycle, but it was a productive conversation. And one of the key components of it, which is the next item on our agenda, is an update to the MOU between VCH and the regional hospital districts, which is the MOU is now 10 years old. And frankly quite out of date and would really value a refresh to better outline how we might be able to better work together going forward. So I think that's a clear opportunity in the coming months to get that done. Happy to take any questions, or are you going to add to that?
You nailed it.
Do you have anything else you'd like to report from?
Yes, I will share that last week I attended the Regional Coordination Center. The Rural Coordination Center for BC is a collaborative group between healthcare providers around the province. And this board approved my attendance on November 30th and December 1st. And we discussed, so it's an annual summit that brings together all of these different providers and to talk about specific themes. And this year's theme was rural maternity care. And it was really interesting to hear how many small communities are finding really innovative ways of attracting and maintaining maternity care in small towns, lots of small towns like Valemount was one of the small towns that is actually being rather innovative. So it was a really great summit. There were GPs, there were midwives, there were doulas, there were kind of everyone that interacts with the emergencies departments. And then there was also a significant representation from First Nations Health Authority and changing some of the practices around the types of care that are offered in communities. So there was, it was great. And what I took away is that there's a lot of care happening in Pemberton and in Squamish and through Whistler and throughout the corridor, but that we have a long way to go with growing populations. And a lot of the work that the primary care network is doing in the corridor will support that first level of care for our communities. So I think we're well served. There was no one there from Lillooet. And I know that that was a concern for Lillooet, which doesn't really get addressed by Sea to Sky, but I did my best to represent the interests of Lillooet at that table. And it was, I think the outcomes will be reported back to us through their what we heard release. So I'll be sure to share that when I get it.
Great, thank you very much. I am also remiss to mention that CAO Gilmore also joined us online for the meeting with BCH. My apologies. Anybody have any questions of clarification? Any motion to receive the verbal report moved by Director Croman, seconded by Director Richmond. All opposed? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next component 10.1 is correspondence for information, which is around the request to update the MOU, which I did speak to about briefly in my verbal report. From Monday's meeting, it was agreed that BCH would take that away and do a first draft of edit and then send it back to the chairs and the vice chairs of the regional hospital district. So I think we can bring that back in the January meeting for a more fulsome update when we see what BCH proposes. That works for everybody. All right, motion to receive. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Richmond. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any late business?
One thing I want to flag, and I'm not sure how we handle it, but looking at Wood Fiber and Fortis and their plans, it's not clear that they are adding or providing capacity to VCH. And from the report we got from VCH, there's already significant demand on existing services. And so in my mind, part of what this body should be saying to VCH is, hey, how are we planning or dealing with, this is a concern, I think, that, that capacity need is being planned for adequately, given especially the feedback they're already getting from the public.
I'm happy to work with you offline to see where we can fit that into a future agenda if it seems to fit, if there's correspondence or something that we can address directly from the board, if that makes sense. Yeah. Any other late business? Any notice of motion? Not seeing any. Motion to adjourn by Director Croman, seconded by Director Rainbow. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.